Good evening. The Middle East is on the brink. Following fresh Israeli strikes on Lebanon, Iran has shut down the vital Strait of Hormuz, escalating the US-Israeli standoff with Tehran. This tests a fragile agreement and complicates talks over Iran's massive sanctions relief. As Tehran pivots to China, Washington faces a dilemma. President Trump's fears over a slowing U.S. economy and volatile markets under new Fed Chair Kevin Warsh was weakening American leverage. Can diplomacy survive this intense military and economic squeeze? Meanwhile, Lebanon is once again at the center of regional tensions as fragile ceasefire arrangements come under severe strain. Despite diplomatic efforts, Israeli strikes and Hezbollah attacks continue, raising new doubts about the stability of the agreement and its impact on wider US-Iran talks. Let's get in focus. President Trump's fear of global market collapse led to a surprising interim peace pact with Iran by lifting oil sanctions to prevent financial disaster. Washington exposed a major weakness. This admission sharply reduced American leverage. Entering upcoming talks, Tehran knows the U.S. avoids further conflict and domestic anger ahead of November elections. Consequently, this agreement strongly favors Iran. While America gains temporary stability, they secure massive relief and reconstruction funds without offering new atomic promises, effectively holding the winning hand. Tehran threatens to block the vital Strait of Hormuz again. Officials claim ongoing Israeli strikes in Lebanon violate recent ceasefire terms. This warning endangers President Trump's new peace pact. While Washington says ships are still passing safely, the threat exposes major flaws in the treaty, mainly because Israel never signed it. This marks a dangerous shift. Shutting this waterway will heavily disrupt global oil markets, proving that Middle Eastern stability demands complete solutions, not just quick deals. Provide more analysis, we're joined from Ohio by Dr. Hassan Abdel Fattah, Professor of International Systems and Business Analysis. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to In Focus. Dr. Abdel Fattah, let me here ask you, how does President Trump's fear of a market collapse weaken Washington's negotiating leverage over Iran?
Well, good evening to you, and thank you for having me. The U.S. economy remains strong, but always markets are highly sensitive to any instability, sensitive to energy shocks. Let's face it, every $10 increase in oil prices, it adds roughly 0.2 to 0.4 percentage points to U.S. inflation. And it also can reduce consumer spending. Tehran understands that Washington wants to avoid another inflation surge ahead of the election cycle, which inevitably affects negotiation leverages. Both parties understand the impact of increase in oil pricing, and United States gets impacted severely. And we've seen this since the war started. The inflation rate jumped high. Oil prices per barrel increased from $60 to $120. Mm-hmm. The gas prices at the gas pump for U.S. citizens, Americans, was extremely high, and any increase in oil pricing by default increase pricing of products, goods, and everything else, and in addition to the inflation rates, which the U.S. government is trying to stop it and do as much as he can or the best to stop the war and stop the inflation rate from going even up. As a target rate, as we all know, is 2%, and we're far away from that 2% anymore.
Now, how is Fed Chair Kevin Warsh's economic strategy impacting U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East?
Well, Kevin Walsh is one of the Feds. He's a Fed chair now, but he had long history of strategies, economic strategies into foreign policy in the Middle East. Well, inflation remains above the Fed's 2% target, hovering near 4% in recent reading. If Middle East tensions push oil higher, the Fed may be forced to keep rates elevated longer. We were lucky enough that they kept the interest rate as is, they did not increase it. That means foreign policy decisions increasingly have domestic economic consequences through inflation, borrowing costs, and growth. Again, it's impacting everyone. It's impacting United States before Iran or more than Iran.
But then, does lifting oil sanctions to save the U.S. economy actually hand a strategic victory to Iran?
Well, I don't think anyone is winning here. The Iranian already have almost 85% damages to their infrastructures. Iranian oil exports have recovered significantly, and we've seen this, reaching roughly 1.5 to 1.8 million barrel per day. Now, every additional 500,000 barrel entering global markets, it helped ease price pressure. And again, this is globally, not just on specific countries, but also it generates billions of dollars in annual revenue for Tehran. Economically, both sides gain, but strategically, Iran gains additional resources and influence. But also, we have to keep in mind that the infrastructure in Iran is mainly has been damaged, and they will need about at least 20 years to get back on track.
Now, Iran would be earning over $60 billion annually. How do you think that would reshape the regional balance of power?
That fact here to gain $60 billion annually, that will certainly give the Iranian huge amount of leverage power. Let's face it, an additional $60 billion represent roughly 12 to 15% of Iran's GDP. That level of revenue could strengthen infrastructure investments, domestic spendings, and regional influence. From a business perspective, it would also increase Iran's role in energy markets. We've seen the Iranian governments have utilized the Strait of Hormuz piece as a leverage for them. Now, to increase Iran's role in energy markets and regional trade networks, I think it will be benefiting Iranian severely in the next years.
And that you have mentioned here is a very contentious point, which is the shutting of the Strait of Hormuz. How will that reflect on the global businesses?
Well, we already seen this when the war started, and we had supply chain disruption with respect to Strait of Hormuz. There is 20% of global oil consumptions, nearly 25% of seaborne oil trade. It passes from Strait of Hormuz. Now, even a temporarily disruption could push crude prices above $100 per barrel within days. We've seen this already. Now, will also raise transportation costs, and that will also increase manufacturing cost and energy cost worldwide. We've seen this. Everyone suffered from this, and we're trying to recover since they started negotiating to have a ceasefire and lift the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
But then, how would shipping companies and insurance markets react to any renewed blockade of this vital waterway?
Well, I don't think prices will go back to what it used to be before the war. So I don't think we will see that $60 per barrel anymore. But also, there are war risk insurance premium have historically increased several hundred% during the Gulf crisis. For large tankers, I believe insurance costs can rise from tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands per each voyage.
Mhm.
Now, those costs eventually reach consumers through higher increase in fuel and product prices. And that's my fear when they start transferring these extra costs to the end consumers. As now we will be hitting just global uh, uh, stagflation, as now the producers will transfer these costs to the end consumers, so we will even make the inflation rate higher and higher.
Now, do you think the US military monitoring this trade would truly guarantee safe passage without triggering a wider war?
Well, the US Navy can reduce risk, but cannot eliminate it fully. Now, there are more than $1 trillion worth of energy trades moves through the Hormuz annually. How much will it cost the US Navy to protect it 100%? So
Mhm.
even one incident involving a tanker or naval vessels can create global market volatility, regardless of military presence or not. Any shot of any drone will shoot any one of the ships. Insurance companies will increase costs to for these ships. Again, I don't think they'll be able to uh, protect it fully.
Mhm. Now, how do fresh getting to another very contentious point, which is the Israeli strikes on Lebanon, and how do you think new or fresh Israeli strikes in Lebanon undermine the fragile ceasefire and the broader US-Iran deal?
Well, we've seen there has been the U.S. administration has been upset with the Israeli strikes, and we've seen a bunch of talks, bunch of conversations. The President Trump has been just going very harsh on Prime Minister of Israel for attacking Lebanon, and that will impact the negotiation. I hope just they act wisely and stop bombing Lebanon, as this is part of the deal. If they don't stop bombing Lebanon, there is no deal. And I don't think this will be the best for any one of the parties. It will not be good for US, it will not be good for Iran, it will not be good for the global economy.
But in fact, Israel has never signed the peace pact. Now, do you think that Washington has the leverage to enforce this treaty that its ally or Israel has already ignored?
I believe if Washington keep pushing Israel, they will be able to enforce it. As we've seen, J.D. Vance, the vice president, he was really extremely harsh on Israeli government, and even President Trump was harsh as well. He mentioned if U.S. doesn't support Israel, what will happen? There is no Israel. It will be wiped out. And again, I don't think Israeli government would want to lose the support of United States.
Right. Anyway, how do you think, or how does Iran strategic pivot to China and the Eurasian trade routes reduce American influence in the region, or do you think it would do that?
Well, I believe, I mean, what we know, China purchases a majority of Iran's oil exports and remains Tehran's largest trading partner. The more Iran integrates into Euro-Asian supply chains and alternative payment systems, the less dependent it becomes on Western financial institutions and US leverage. Will Iran or will China support Iran fully? I don't know. They didn't really do anything when the war started. Iran was just dealing with US and Israeli war on its own. They may help with some logistics, intelligence, information, but they didn't really get involved.
Interfere
So,
directly.
yeah, they did not interfere.
Well, remains to be seen. That was Dr. Hassan Abdel Fattah, Professor of International Systems and Business Analyst. We thank you so much for your special insights. And tensions are escalating in Lebanon despite a fragile ceasefire, with renewed violence now casting doubt over the future of broader US-Iran diplomacy. Iran says it is closing the Strait of Hormuz following renewed Israeli strikes in Lebanon, a move that could further strain the fragile interim peace deal with the United States signed just days ago. According to The Guardian, it is not yet clear whether the threat has been implemented or whether it will disrupt planned talks in Switzerland on Sunday aimed at turning the interim US-Iran agreement into a more detailed deal on Iran's nuclear program. The escalation comes as fighting between Israel and Hezbollah continues to intensify despite reports of a renewed ceasefire. Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon on Saturday killed at least 16 people, according to local authorities. The US-Iran agreement is meant to halt hostilities across all fronts, including Lebanon, but it has faced sharp criticism from Israeli officials who argue it limits Israel's ability to counter Hezbollah. Meanwhile, both sides have continued to trade blame for ongoing attacks, raising fresh doubts over whether the ceasefire and the wider peace process can hold. Right, for more analysis, we're joined from Beirut by Mr. Fawzi Boudiab, writer and political analyst. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to In Focus. Let me start by asking, is Lebanon now the ultimate test of whether the US-Iran agreement can survive?
Good evening to you. Thank you so much for having me. Certainly, Lebanon today can be seen as the regional fight arena and a main measure to assess how the negotiations are going, especially after Iran has been successful in investing in the Hezbollah battles, being part of the agreement and for the framework agreement to hold, and also a few hours before the start of the negotiations, after approving the framework agreement. 1 hour ago, the Israeli Prime Minister has instructed the Israeli army to halt all military operations in South Lebanon.
Right. Can Washington and Tehran reach a lasting deal while fighting continues along the Israeli-Lebanon front?
The Israeli-US Iranian interests can rise above any other Lebanese-Israeli crisis, because the Israeli-Lebanese crisis is very deep and can date back to many years and circumstances. And when the Iranian interests stumble in these negotiations, they will take leverage in the Lebanese crisis to as a bargaining chip. And also, when Israel sees things going south for them, they will use this bargaining chip to pressure Iran and the United States to impose their terms during the negotiations. It's true that Hezbollah is the Iranian arm here, but Israel is not on the negotiation table at the moment as they want with their leverages and conditions and terms. Because the United States of America apparently today have certain divisions and disagreements when it comes to their interests compared to Netanyahu's interests. That's why the Lebanese arena will be a battlefield on a military level and at the negotiation table as well.
Israel has intensified strikes in southern Lebanon despite the ceasefire. Do these attacks signal a rejection of the newly signed memorandum of understanding between Washington and Tehran?
Israel has announced more than once their disapproval of the Memorandum of Understanding, saying that this agreement does not meet the Israeli aspiration and or the goals Israel has entered this war for. Also, Israel is betting their stakes that Iran will not continue the negotiations and that they will not approve of the U.S. conditions, especially when it comes to the nuclear program. And that's why the Lebanese arena will always be under the pressure of the Israeli army as a bargaining chip for Iran and for the United States. And let's take what happened today in the Strait of Hormuz as an example. The Revolutionary Guard instructed to close the strait, which means that Iran wants to continue the negotiations, because if we look at what happened of divisions between the Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian presidency regarding the framework agreement, and also what has been stated by the supreme leader and what has been reported by the media, that he is keeping and that he has preservations of some items on this agreement. I think Israel and Iran have each have their interests, and they will use Lebanon to obstacle or to go with the negotiations in order to take whatever they want from Trump, who is now embarrassed and is pushing to get out of this Iranian dilemma with certain gains, at least to save face during the next elections and to improve his situation before the United States people and administration from the Democrats and the Republicans, both, as he did not achieve the victory he wanted.
Getting back to Lebanon, and can you describe the status of the Lebanese residents who are just returning to their devastated homes following the fragile ceasefire? Are they optimistic that the truce would hold? What is their status at this current time? How did they find their own homes? Can you describe the whole situation?
In fact, what we have witnessed through videos on the social media and situations posted by our residents, they are stunned, to say the least, and horrified by the volume of destruction and bombardment everywhere, destroying all the houses, as it was deliberate to destroy all the infrastructure in these operations led by the Israeli attacks. Many towns are now even not accessible to the residents to go back to. At the Zahrani River, there is complete destruction, and citizens are highly concerned that these agreements will never hold, and also they have a feeling that Hezbollah will never be ready to give up confronting Israel in this stage, especially that they have went into the depth of the Lebanese territory. And this is exactly the trap they wanted to make in order to take more of the Lebanese territories. It is the same scenario done by Hamas, and we have seen the results in Gaza. And I think we are seeing the same results now in the same towns inside South Lebanon.
Do you think US President Trump would realistically guarantee Israeli compliance with any future agreement that is from the American side? And do you think Iran could do the same with Hezbollah, meaning they would guarantee that Hezbollah would not have any kind of confrontation with Israel? I mean, can both sides have the leverage of doing that?
I think we're going to see 60 days of accurate negotiations in the military course and the negotiation course, and the Lebanese arena will be a test to the failure or success of the negotiations. We cannot place our bets at the moment before we guarantee the Israeli withdrawal procedures from the areas they have occupied recently, and we also wait to see what happens on the Lebanon-Israel negotiation table with U.S. sponsorship. We cannot miss to observe this course as the Lebanese state was not a party to the ceasefire agreement sponsored by Qatar and the United States. But eventually, who's going to deploy the Lebanese army in the areas to be evacuated from the Israeli forces? It is the Lebanese state, and they are going to handle the Hezbollah disarmament. And that's why the Lebanese state must be empowered to take over this void to be left by the Israeli forces. We need to take example of Gaza and in Syria. The ceasefires can be very fragile as long as the fighters are still in the same battlefield.
Now, is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu more lenient to align with President Trump's push for de-escalation in Lebanon, or with the far-right hardliner members of his coalition who favor expanding military operations in the south?
The Israeli Prime Minister is now confused between the two parties. He does not want to upset Trump permanently and significantly, and at the meantime he has the elections coming along, which puts him in an existential dilemma with the Zionist entity if he's not lucky with the elections. He has two very difficult options: to continue the operations in South Lebanon to satisfy the far right, and also he's trying to de-escalate in order to maintain a good relationship with the US President Donald Trump, especially that the US President will have the final say in the Israeli elections.
Now, if the US cannot restrain Israeli or prevent Israeli military operations in Lebanon, what confidence, or how can there be a kind of confidence measures built between Washington and Iran on the broader commitments of any future deal?
The Iranian United States the negotiations started in 2015. It went through very contradicting phases. It witnessed a lot of divisions and regional interests imposing themselves in certain in specific directions. Lebanon is only a bargaining chip here. It can be lifted any moment. It's not a main source of interest for any of the parties. When Iran guarantees its interests with the United States, when they guarantee their points and conditions, Hezbollah will never be the obstacle before the implementation of this agreement, because in fact Hezbollah is working for Iran and not the other way around. Iran is leveraging Hezbollah at the moment and leveraging the military operations with the Israeli enemy, but at the meantime the Iranian interests will rise above any others in the future.
Now, if fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalates once again, what impact would that have on efforts to secure a lasting US-Iran agreement, and what impact would that have on Iran?
If the negotiations are going in Iran's way, Iran will never intervene or cut the negotiations, except if they felt that like they are in a corner and they have to use this bargaining chip. So far, and based on previous experiences and in the Islamabad negotiations, Iran has stated that they will never enter any negotiations before a ceasefire, and in spite of that they went into the negotiations in 10 or 15 days, and it was not impacted at all or stumbled by the military operations in South Lebanon. And also at the meantime the Lebanese Dahya was being bombed and bombarded, and Iran did nothing about it. When Iran entered the negotiations or the truce last month in April, between Iran and the United States, Israel was able to take more territories in Lebanon, bombarded the Lebanese suburb, and Iran did nothing about it and did not strike any attacks against Israel, because it was already negotiating with the United States in order to achieve this memorandum of understanding. Iran is using its card very successfully only for its own interests, and when it contradicts with the other, they will let go of any other bargaining chips, such as Lebanon here, when they find their own strategic interests.
So, what? Right. Now, from your point of view, has Lebanon become a bargaining chip in a much larger negotiation and confrontation between Washington and Tehran?
I think it's more between Israel and Tehran, and also between Tehran and Washington. Washington now want to separate the Lebanese course from the Iranian course. They pressingly wanted to end the Lebanese military issue and to prevail peace in Lebanon. And President Trump said that loud and clear. So did the US officials who come to Lebanon. They state that for Lebanese officials that they are very keen on ending the conflict in Lebanon, and it's enough fighting in Lebanon, meaning that the Lebanese people should finally have some peace. But also the United States of America have their own interests, and these interests are above all.
Right. From Beirut, that was Mr. Fawzi Boudiab, writer and political analyst. We thank you so much for joining us and for your time, and definitely for the valuable discussion. Now, with the Strait of Hormuz blocked in Lebanon burning, the fragile US-Iran pact hangs by a thread. As American economic fears clash with the Israeli strikes, the Middle East faces a critical crossroads. Will diplomacy survive, or is a wider war inevitable? Remains to be seen. That was all for this episode of In Focus. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.